Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. You know, I've had this weird thing. I posted a video on my other channel directly to YouTube, which they're not going to watch. I don't know who YouTube is, but talking about their dysfunctional, system in terms of demonetization of videos. And the video is self-explanatory on my Apocalypse Now channel. But that's messed me up, and I put a journey series up here yesterday. I've had videos up for 3 days in a row here for the last 3 days. And, that's not helpful in various ways, but I'm waiting for those videos to be viewed on my other channel, so it's all messed up. And so, anyways, this is what I consider an important breakthrough for me personally in understanding the whole Joe Biden debacle. I'm not going to say anything that's mind-blowing, and it's stuff that I said before, but I see it differently. Like, I see it clearer, and even though I'm saying something that you've probably heard before from me or other people, it just struck me as being that there's a coup, that there's a coup by the intelligence community, and it's so obvious now that with Joe Biden, and then I'm going to talk about Trump as well. And it's really all the way back through, they say post-Kennedy, but I don't know exactly what's happened recently with Joe Biden that's significant. But I'm going to bring Trump up for all you Trumpers, and I'm going to demonstrate this whole, the whole level of this psychological operation. And so let's start here. Here's the big revelation, the big reveal.
Well, Amber, it's been revealed through FOIA requests that President Joe Biden allegedly used the fake name Robert L. Peters when emailing his son's business associates, including using it to schedule secret calls with the president of Ukraine at the time. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability Chairman James Comer has called on the National Archives and Records Administration to provide records related to then Vice President Biden's official duties that might have overlapped with his son's activities in Ukraine.
Okay, so it's a weird. They're kind of monotone, like these women. Like it starts off here.
Happy Friday and welcome to Rising. I'm Amber Athey, joined by Jessica Burbank. Jessica, I hope you've been having a great week so far.
Yeah, so far so good, but things get better every time we do Rising Friday together.
Jessica, I hope you are doing well. Yeah. Things always get better when we do Rising Friday together. Like, it's very robotic. This comes from the Hill. But this revelation is epic. And, my wife was telling me about it. We're in the pasture, and I'm like, that's bizarre. Like, and I didn't believe it, like, it's one of those things I thought was some right-wing propaganda. But then it came out and it was true. And here is the they asked for a Freedom of Information Act request here. And so here, let me make this one thing bigger. It's just a little bit unclear here, but it says here, the committee seeks unrestricted special access under the PRA to case number 2023-0022-F entitled Email Messages to and from Vice President Biden and Hunter Biden related to the Burisma in Ukraine, which has been published on NARA's website. But here is where it gets into it. Attached to this email and made available on the NARA website is a document that indicates at 9 a.m. on May 27, 2016, Vice President Biden took a call with President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko. It is concerning to the committee, however, that this document was sent to Robert L. Peters, a pseudonym the committee has identified as then Vice President Biden. So he used this pseudonym. Additionally, the committee questions why the Vice President's son, Hunter Biden, and only Hunter Biden, was copied on this email to then Vice President Biden. So this was an email that was sent to this guy, Robert L. Peters, and copied to Hunter Biden from the president of the Ukraine. So think about that. That's corruption right there. And the pseudonym in itself is, why would you use a pseudonym? And I'm going to get into how this is an intelligence community have just are running, they've run some sort of a coup now because this guy is a complete puppet, which we all knew. But now this is confirmed in a way that's a lot clearer. And I'm going to bring this into, I'll talk about this more in a bit. So then it says this, report reveals 6 Obama administration officials use alias email addresses, including Joe Biden and Barack Obama himself. Ask yourself what good reason would a president and vice president need to use fake emails if it wasn't to do shady things. Well, that's part of what I'm going to talk about. Then here is just like some other things that came up. So first he's going to walk away with this still connected to him.
Concludes our press conference. Please stay seated.
It gets pulled out, so he's confused. So what happened? What happened? The thing gets pulled out of his ear here.
Please stay seated as the leaders depart, please. Please stay seated.
Looks around confused. Smiles at everybody. Like I just did another, I think I just pooped my Depends. Smiles.
We're winning all the competition.
And he walks backwards. And these two guys shake hands, which he should have done, right? He should be shaking hands with the other leaders. And they're all like doing that. He's just considered a complete, senile MNFer who's has dementia-ridden brain, and he's wandering around aimlessly.
I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here. And Daddy owes you. Okay? So talk to me afterwards.
So that's really creepy. And just, typical JoJo Magoo. Okay, so let's briefly move on to Hunter Biden here. But first, in the corner here, there's Federman with a new porn stash, and he looks like Walter White. I'm going to cover that tomorrow or sometime on my other channel. Hunter Biden pleads to God for justice at family bar mitzvah ceremony. There's a sentence for you. So this guy's going to introduce Hunter Biden here.
Members, cousin, friends were assigned to read the prayer for the country, the prayer for Israel, and the prayer for peace. And I'd like to invite them to join me now on the lower bima.
There's Hunter. So Hunter's going to come up. He's wearing a yarmulke. He isn't Jewish. I'm not sure that he's there. I don't know how he's related to the person getting the bar mitzvah. It's a ritual for, I guess there's multiple kids here. I don't know. And it's like a passage into adulthood for 13-year-olds. I went to my friend's bar mitzvah when I was, a kid. Like when I was 13.
Page 177.
Thank you. A prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy, accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessings upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders and judges, officers and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed. So
now this guy, we know for a fact that he's been a illegal drug user for most of his adult life. And he's been involved in a lot of other shady and seedy activities that we can't prove. But this is a guy who is a criminal. Like, this is a high-level criminal, right? And a drug addict, a person with deviant tendencies. And he's
that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God, whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to...
Okay, so that's Hunter Biden at a bar mitzvah. Hunter Biden stayed at White House for 2 straight weeks after agreeing to ill-fated plea deal without most staff knowing about him being there or the plea deal. And, probably around the time when they found that cocaine, right? Hunter Biden's lawyers threatened to put President Biden on the stand, report says. Hunter Biden lawyers warned prosecutors last year The defense would put the president on the stand to testify in his son's defense if criminal charges were ever brought against him, according to a report. Hunter Biden's lawyer, Chris Clark, wrote a letter to prosecutors last October after news leaked that federal agents had enough evidence to charge the first son with illegally buying a firearm while still using crack cocaine. So President Biden now unquestionably would be a fact witness for the defense in any criminal trial. So that's, pretty seedy as well. Okay, what struck me about this in a way I hadn't conceptualized it before, and I'm not going to say anything like new, as I said, but I have a clarity about it, right? That there must have been some sort of coup by the intelligence community. And, Barack Obama was, there was a guy, I forget the guy's name, but he did a report about this. I saw an interview he did. This is back in the old InfoWars days when Alex Jones had real guests on. I think it was a guy, Wayne Mattson, maybe, but I'm not sure. But he did a report documenting the links to Obama family and the CIA through they lived in Hawaii. And there was a huge contingent of, we know about from the Snowden movie that Snowden was, the secrets that he allegedly stole in the Rubik's Cube came out of a huge intelligence base that was cyber intelligence in Hawaii. That Hawaii has a large intelligence community, tech community contingent there. And, of course, the military bases. So Hawaii is very militarized, and, it's been made into one of these, hubs for national security, NSA, and these things. And it has long time been a hub for CIA activity. And this guy documented there were these banks that were known as CIA banks. And Obama's grandparents worked for them. So this is a connection to Hawaii, which is going through this, these fake fires or whatever's going on there, these intentional fires or whatever, that there is a connection to the, what people call the deep state, the intelligence community. And all of Obama's, his mom and his two grandparents were connected to these institutions that are all tied to the CIA. So Obama was a CIA creation, right? His family was CIA, they were a CIA family. And so you had there's all these different power groups vying for power. And the intelligence community had a candidate that was a CIA-created candidate. And they put that candidate in front of Hillary Clinton, who had her own power backing, right? And so the CIA won that battle of the power groups. And they had a guy that was their shill, Obama, who was running their agenda. All this stuff to do with the intelligence community. And Joe Biden was a part of that administration. And so what's significant about this is, why would Obama and his staff need pseudonyms, right, if they're not doing something criminal? Because, again, the intelligence community has access to all of our emails and all of our data. That's been stated. The Snowden reports, things that have been whistleblowers, things that have come out. We know that the NSA has the ability to spy on everything that we do digitally. They have access to everything, encrypted or not. And he has staffers that you could send things to avoid any sort of, would create plausible deniability. So his staffers could have pseudonyms that you could send it to, but not Obama himself. Like, that's incriminating. There's no reason for him to pretend to be somebody else. And with the Joe Biden thing, going to Hunter Biden, I mean, this whole thing is so incriminating, and beyond, all these other aspects, because, again, why would he have a pseudonym? I mean, there's only one reason: to cover up criminal activity. Plus, they weren't looking for, when they did the Freedom of Information Act, they weren't looking for anything that was to Robert L. Peters. They were looking for things that were just to, like, if you were going to do search terms, you would look for things that were to Joe Biden, and you would be searching whatever databases they had of all these archived these archived, because these are all official emails and things that are governmental property. And when you're searching for them, you're searching for Joe Biden, not Robert L. Peters. And so the intelligence community knew about this. And it's not being covered at all by the mainstream media. Like if you search Robert L. Peters, there's nothing from CNN or MSNBC or any of these, even to whatever extent Fox maybe. I don't know if Fox is covering it. But it doesn't matter, right? Because people are, the sheeple are so, and I'll get into this with Trump as well, they can do no wrong, right? To the sheeple, Biden will always be innocent to the sheeple Democrats, just like Trump will always be a good guy and their champion to the QBs and the other, Trumpers, and they'll never admit to it. There's nothing you can show them to change their minds, which is an indication of a collapsed system. And that there has been a, CIA intelligence community coup because Joe Biden doing these things probably thought he was done. In 2015, when CNN did a hit piece on him and everyone told him not to run against Hillary, that Hillary was going to get the nomination in 2016. And he was old as F. And so he was probably just glomming on as much as he could with Burisma and the Ukraine, because now this has ties to the Ukraine, which they're, laundering money through right now. All these things. Again, not provable by me, but, come on. We all know. But, he was, basically done. So he didn't care. This Robert L. Peters email and the stuff with Hunter Biden's laptop would never be an issue. No one would care about it because they had been intelligence community shills all along. Joe Biden did whatever they wanted. He was one of the more puppeted politicians. They're all puppets, but this guy went all in. He was completely corrupt. And he, he was an asset. He's a CIA asset. And they were never going to investigate him, and no one would care because he was a dying politician and he has a crackhead son that if he doesn't run for president, nobody cares about. But then they summoned him back up. And this explains why. Because they own him so much, right? He was already in, early stages or middle stages dementia when he ran for president in 2019. And he had a horrible record of being a liar, a plagiarist, being a complete bozo, a gaff magnet, a snoozler, groper. I mean, he should have been Me Too'd multiple times himself. So he had all that stuff going against him. He was wandering off stage, challenging people to fights and push-up contests and IQ contests and calling people fat. I mean, he was just a disaster. And they said, well, he's the only guy that can beat Trump. And Trump only had under 50% approval ratings. And he had a high level of people who hated him. It was in the, the high 40s, even into the 50s. So why couldn't they find some competent candidate to beat Trump? Somebody who could be, it's not like the whole Democratic Party couldn't produce one person that was a quality candidate that could beat a guy who was highly unliked going through the crisis of COVID. Why did it have to be Joe Biden? I mean, why would it be Joe Biden? He was the worst candidate. The other candidates were laughing at him because of his senility, and they had to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders just to win the primary. So why this guy? No enthusiasm, obviously not mentally competent, and somebody who has a horrible track record. He has a crackhead son. They had to cover up his crackhead son's, dropping off hard drives with incriminating type of material. And they had all of this. The FBI had it. CIA had it. They all knew about it. Why would they run a guy with all these potential scandals? Is because they completely owned him. He'll do anything they say. And if he didn't, they have all this leverage over him because they know about all of his corruption. But they don't even have to use that because he's always been their asset. So this is a coup candidate. And the American people are so dumbed down, and the hatred for Trump was so prevalent in the Democratic Party, they could push this guy through. I mean, it's ridiculous, but that was the case. That the American people weren't even going to balk at what they needed to do to make this guy president and what they were going to have to cover up in terms of his presidency. Because, this is a huge story. They used a pseudonym that was in a correspondence, in multiple correspondences, but one from the president of the Ukraine during the Burisma, you remember there was a video of him saying, if you don't fire this prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion worth of aid. And that was, linked to Burisma. And then, like that video of him saying that. And this guy mails it to a pseudonym. So this Ukrainian guy knows that Joe Biden has a pseudonym because they're having secret correspondence that they don't want the public to know about, and mails it to his son, who's a crackhead, who's working for a company. He never once went to their facility. He doesn't speak the language, and he has no experience in natural gas or in anything to do with Ukrainian business. And yet he's making bank while he smokes crack. Like he's in, North Hollywood and in New York City banging strippers named Dallas from Arkansas, impregnating them. And in North Hollywood, and writes a book out about it and goes on Jimmy Kimmel's. And he was getting paid millions of dollars for smoking crack. And Joe Biden was involved in that with a pseudonym and all the evidence. So the intelligence community knew about all these things and was complicit in covering them up, and then activated this candidate and pushed him through to become president because he's completely owned by them. As a continuation of a candidate in Obama they completely owned. And there's always power brokers that own candidates. There's these different power contingents. There's the banking industry. There's, the media power contingent. There's foreign countries like China and Israel and these other countries. And there's all these different, blocks of power that you have to get endorsed by one or many of them to become president. And all these powerful groups, they work together, but they also are in competition. And the CIA and the intelligence community won this competition because there's been a coup. Like, they are just running things. So much so that this story should end Biden's career. I mean, this stuff with Hunter Biden, now that that's become public and people hear about it, they're, even some of the Biden supporters are questioning him and his mental competence. And any of these videos of him stumbling around and completely lost on stage, he only has about 30 some odd support, 33, 35% support. And that's not enough to be reelected. They're running him against Trump, who has got his own issues and his own criminal problems that are real. That's another example where they're lording this thing over the candidates and saying, we'll Trump you, right? We'll do what we're doing to Trump. If you don't go with our agenda, this is what you'll get. Trump went against the intelligence community, and there's that famous quote I'll play at the end of this video, this audio that I'm doing, where Chuck Schumer talks about what will happen when you challenge the intelligence community. And then Trump got burned because he challenged the intelligence community, and they've been dogging him ever since. And that's an example of what they'll do, the power that they have, right? And, there's not a real president because they're running the president. They have multiple ways of blackmailing and strong-arming any of these politicians and ordinary citizens. They can just force you to do anything because of their knowledge, right? And the ways that they can even make things up and incriminate you. Just all the technological breakthroughs that have made it easy to falsely, all the deep fake stuff and all the stuff that they have, right? And so this is, where we are as a country. And this totally indicates that there's been a coup, that there's no longer any sort of, democracy or anything like that. They have complete control. So much so that they can have this doddering old senile, pooping in his depends, walking gaff of a president that's been known to have no integrity or ethics or morals, and his mind is gone, and his crackhead son, and they're still going to run him again, and maybe he'll win. Like, there's no way he should, like, they just own it. They have this thing all wired up. And so let's move to the Trump thing, because I want to, have some final thoughts about this as well. But let's go to the Trump thing just to show, that Trump is a part of this. Like, Trump is being used and handled in the same way.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
Back at you.
Back at you.
Back at you.
So I want to tie these two things together. Trump and Biden, Biden and Trump, extreme Democrats, extreme Republicans, the whole sham, right? The whole operation, the whole intelligence community psyop. And so let's start here. So this was the Tim Ballard interview with Donald Trump. And you have Donald Trump, Tim Ballard, and that Sound of Freedom actor, Jim Caviezel. And by the way, Sound of Freedom, which cost $14 million to make, is raked in $155 million. So it is a huge success. This is the most successful movie based on its budget, right? Compared to how much money it cost to make, how much profit it generated. And so it is a financially successful movie. But you have these three guys interviewed here.
Is ignoring the south border. We don't have a country without a border.
Yeah. 85,000, Mr. President, 85,000 unaccompanied minors during the Joe Biden administration showed up and were released into the belly of the United States, which is the #1 consumer of child exploitation material in the world.
Okay, so the way that this is being presented to you is that the Biden administration, which, sucks, I'm not defending them, obviously, is pro-pedo, and Trump is anti-pedo. Trump was a, president who was going to get things done in terms of the human trafficking market. That Trump is a good guy and Joe Biden's the bad guy, the way that Cubies think about it, right? Trump is against the deep state and all the rest of it. But the problem with that is Trump is extraordinarily creepy, and he had that's an undeniable weird relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So here's Trump back when he was allowed on The View, and The View women used to love him.
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.
Stop it! Oh, it's so weird.
So he says that if Ivanka wasn't his daughter, perhaps he'd be dating her.
Stop. You know what? You are sick.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
How
Well, you're
terrible.
known for saying outrageous things, Mr. Trump. Who are you, Woody Allen?
That's a good one, Joy. Joy made it funny. Just goes to show you how much they hate Trump now. But they didn't have really much of a problem. They're just, ribbing him in a humorous way for saying that he wants to date his daughter. And I've showed you the pictures of his daughter growing up with him and sitting on her lap, all these things. They have a creepy relationship, which I'm not going to get into. But also Trump has a long history of relationships with younger women. And let's go through this a little bit here.
Come on in. Go inside. An invitation into Donald Trump's world.
Look at him dance. He's doing more than his usual dance was when he moves his fist back and forth like he's got a hoodie on. He's tugging on the string. I've shown you that before. Look at him go. Look at him go.
1992, found in the NBC archives, shows the future president welcoming Jeffrey Epstein to his Mar-a-Lago estate. The get-together more than a decade before Epstein pleaded guilty to prostitution charges in Florida. Both men are seen enjoying themselves. Trump
There's Giselle Maxwell behind him,
pointing out women dancing in front of them. An apparently friendly encounter with a man the president is now looking to distance himself from.
Well, I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think.
Okay, so the falling out, the Trumpers, he's told this Trumpers, had to do with Jeffrey Epstein's issues with younger women, but he didn't really have a problem with that because Trump once called Jeffrey Epstein a terrific guy. What do you know about their connection? Well, there was something else he said that's even worse. I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. Fun. He's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. So he says he's known him for 15 years. And he is talking about how Jeffrey likes beautiful women as much as he does, and some of them are on the younger side. Now, Trump has been around women in their 20s. He's dated women in their 20s, younger women. He's been around the beauty pageant, flirting with younger women. And so when he says younger side, he means younger than 20, because he likes women who are in their 20s he was dating much younger women his whole life. And if he's dated women who are, in their 20s and, women who are 18, even 19 years old, when he says the younger side, he means basically girls, because that meant he knew that Jeffrey Epstein was into 15, 16-year-old girls and didn't have a problem with it because, those people didn't. These socialites, these wealthy billionaires, this is something that's very common for them. Trump wasn't running for president, so he didn't mind saying that, right? Even this guy says...
But on the most important new case announced today by the Justice Department, the Attorney General has recused himself. The Attorney General of the United States did not recuse himself from decisions involving the investigation of the president who made him the Attorney General of the United States. That would seem to be an obvious conflict of interest for Attorney General William Barr, but it takes an awful lot for William Barr to recuse himself from anything. But he did recuse himself from the biggest case the Justice Department announced today, the federal sex trafficking case against Donald Trump's old friend Jeffrey Epstein. Here is the Attorney General's explanation.
So this guy got into it either. Even this clown got into it, right, about Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, that's how the Democrats wanted to frame it. Of course, the Republicans wanted to frame Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with the Clintons. They were all in relationship with him. Jeffrey Epstein was in relationship with Republicans and Democrats. He was in a relationship with Trump and the Clintons. And he had all these seedy relationships, right? But the Trumpers want to dismiss this, which they can't. And I'll get into that in just a moment.
Thursday night. You're going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
So this is like a 8 or 9 year old girl, actually. And so, or whatever it is. And so Trump is saying that when she turns of age, he's going to date her. Which, of course, means that when he says Jeffrey Epstein likes them young, he's talking about girls that are even younger than the ones that Trump likes, who are, basically on the verge of being barely legal. Former Playboy model spills details of alleged affair with Trump, who tried to pay him. This is this woman who Trump put in an apartment and was Karen McDougall. And here's her interview with Anderson Cooper.
So what happened after you had been intimate?
Well, after we had been intimate, he tried to pay me, and I actually didn't know how to take that.
Did he actually try to hand you money?
He did. He did, and I said, I just had this look of, I don't even know how to describe it. The look in my face must have been so sad, because I had never been offered money like that before, number one. But number two, I thought, does he think that I'm in this for money, or why I'm here tonight? Or is this a normal thing? I didn't know, but I looked at him and I said, that's not me. I'm not that kind of girl.
Well, first of all, he ended up putting her up in an apartment. And he was like 30 years older than she was or something, 20, 30 years older than her. And so, of course, she was in it for money. Donald was just turning 60. And, she was a playmate. She posed naked for Playboy. So she was willing to sell her sexuality for money, just not a cash payment, right?
And he said, you're really special. And I was like, thank you. So I left. I actually got into the car for Keith to take me home, and I started crying. I was really sad, and it really hurt me. But I went back.
Hurt you that he saw you in that way?
Yes, it hurt me that he saw me in that light, and he obviously assumed that that's the kind of girl I was. Maybe because I was a playmate, I don't know, but...
Even though you'd had a night of conversation and days of conversation, it hurt you that it boiled down in the end to that?
It did hurt me. It did hurt me. I was crying in the backseat of the car. Like I said, I got home and into my apartment, and I cried for a lot.
Okay, so Donald Trump was with playmates, with prostitutes, with porn stars. He paid off porn stars, and he cheated on all of his wives. So he has a lot of bad tendencies when it comes to women. He's a womanizer. He was involved as he bought the the rights to Miss USA pageant. He was around all those young girls. I've showed you all the images, you know, and the things he said about grab them by the bonus hole and the rest of it. And so Donald Trump is not the guy that the Republicans want him to be in this interview. He's not the hero, right? He's not the hero that's going to bring about some sort of justice here.
One of the many things I have done as president and thereafter is to expose the massive corruption and fraud that takes place.
We got a lot of fish boy stuff going on here. Fish boy. Got him.
On a regular basis within
Fish boy.
the USA. Hard to believe, isn't it? Look how corrupt the Department of Injustice has turned out to be. And the FBI with FISA, Twitter files, lies to Congress and everywhere else. The laptop from hell, Facebook, the top agent in charge of the Russia hoax just being arrested.
Damn fish boy.
An insurance policy and 51 intel agents. It's a big scam. I exposed it all, and I will be the one to clean it up.
Yeah, sure you will. So there's a couple of things, the two big stories in what drives the QBs and the Sound of Freedom people, which is the same thing, who are obsessed with bringing an end to child trafficking, which in itself is a good thing. If they could actually do that, that would be good. If they could actually make some real changes to abuse and trafficking, all these, you know, various things. But they can't, and they're going about it the wrong way, and they're actually destroying and making it harder for something like that to happen by politicizing it, which I talked about before, right? But there are two major issues are the pizza thing. There are two major sort of big stories, the pizza thing and Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein's the central figure in all this, right? And so Trump is their hero. He's their guy. He's the guy who's going to clean everything up. And they've put all their eggs in the Trump basket. And I talked about the Sound of Freedom stuff for so long. But you can't do that when Trump was so palsy-walsy with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, he even talked about Jeffrey Epstein liking young girls. And he said he knew him for 15 years. He's at a party with young girls with him, dancing around and palling around. He knew. Like, he knew Jeffrey Epstein was about. They all did. They were all pals with him. Like, Jeffrey Epstein had a huge black book of names of celebrities and politicians, and he got around, and no one had a problem with what he was doing. And they all knew. He didn't keep it a secret. He was, he was that guy. And, Woody Allen was pals with him that they joked about, all these people. And Trump was, just as immoral. He's a part of that club. And Trumpers can't deal with that. They just can't go there. Just like Biden and his followers won't ever admit that he's senile, that he is also, even maybe more so, a creep with women and kids. He's just a real creep, and he's a criminal. They both are. They both use their presidency. Trump made hundreds of millions of dollars, him and Jared Kushner and Ivanka of Saudi Arabia and other countries. They monetized the presidency, which you knew Trump was going to do, because that's what Trump does. He was going to get as much out of the presidency as he could monetarily for his business, and he did that. And they're not really even looking into that part of his corruption. And Biden did the same thing with Hunter Biden. They all do. They all try to monetize or work towards monetizing their presidency, and this is what senators do. This is what House of Representative members do. They all monetize their political position, and they rake in the money, and they're with all these seedy people, the drug dealers and the human traffickers and all the stuff to do with the intelligence community, and they're all owned because if people knew who they really were, then they would be, people would be mortified. But not now, because everything's so politicized and so divided that people won't buy that their guy is bad, or even if they don't recognize that he's bad, they say the other guy is worse. And so there's a couple of things here. You have politicians, and politicians have gotten so corrupted and so greedy and so able to be bought. Like there was a interview where RFK Jr. was talking about how Trump hired him to go after, for the FDA to go after the boop and the pharmaceutical companies, and then Pfizer gave Trump $1 million, and that was the end of that. Like he was, not able to do anything with that. And so you have, a situation where the populists, the people who are most influenced by politics and feel like they have to vote and are politically active, and they're going to vote one way or the other, and they are going to pick one side or the other, have become so politicized and so divided, they can't possibly see that their candidate sucks and their party sucks. They think that the other party is so evil that anything's better. You have to pick one side or the other. You have to participate. And then that the intelligence community is running the show. Because what they're doing with Trump in prosecuting him, they're showing you what they can do to any candidate and make it impossible for that candidate to get anything done. Scandal after scandal, and that they'll use all the information at their disposal of the corruption and the debauchery and all the things that these candidates have. But the other piece is like things like Jojo Magoo. I mean, he's involved in, and they're doing this just right out in the open. What Trump did with his with Jared Kushner and Ivanka and all the money that they were looting, and in terms of monetization of his political position, and something Biden did years and years before that, that they're so corrupt, that they're so owned, like they can't, do anything without the permission of the intelligence community because they're compromised, right? They're all compromised in such a way that there's no hope of them ever making their own decision, like going rogue and actually acting like a president, because they can be thrown in jail at any moment and, ruined in one way or another. Now, I've known all this for a while. I've been talking about this for years, but it's just so more right in your face. The pseudonym for Obama and, for Biden, I mean, especially Biden with his son, and his son just being a crackhead and just right out in the open, and the media not covering it, like it's just so incriminating. And the guy is senile, which anybody can see, and they're like, they can throw any guy up there and run it, and run that guy as a puppet, and conduct these psychological operations right out in the open, and there's no defense. Like, they know that even if 70% of the people knew Biden is senile and are against him, what difference does it make? There's no apparatus, there's no checks and balances anymore to stop it. They know they've got you, right? They know that you might complain and you might get the information out. I mean, the internet's actually really helped them because it's exposed that we have nothing that can stop them, right? We're not going to do anything. We don't have any system any weapon. Like, we don't have anything to leverage them and leverage their position. They could just come in, steal your lunch money, and you can complain about it, right? And they don't care, like, if you're upset. They don't care if you're, the customer's not always right anymore. They don't care. They don't care if you complain. They don't care if you're unhappy. They're just going to ram this down your throats. And, it's going to be like China or even worse in a few years. I mean, this is what they're doing. And the young people, they'll accept all this stuff. They'll accept going to some Agenda 23, 31, 33 housing or whatever it is, right? I'm still on Agenda 21, but now it's Agenda 31. But they'll put you in these houses, these line cities. They'll move you away from, they'll steal your property, get rid of the idea of home ownership, get rid of your vehicles, and put you in these 20-minute cities. I mean, they're already doing this in Europe, and they're doing it, everywhere around the world and when they can. And they'll just depopulate the people that aren't, on board, the older generations. I mean, it's getting into the dark hour where they know that they got you. I mean, in America, it's a little worse because they still haven't gotten the Second Amendment yet. And so there's that element that makes it harder in America. But the younger generation, they're already pacified. And they know the older generation doesn't have anything, right? Doesn't have a plan, doesn't have a strategy, doesn't have organization, doesn't have anything. They don't have any money, which I document in these other, how this is a criminal enterprise. I talked about that, too big to fail in the the follow-up bonus video. And so, you know, there's a level of bankruptcy that they have to just grab your Social Security, grab your money, grab anything you think of value, and reboot the economy. And part of that is they got you conned to believing Trump's going to save you, or that Biden's going to save you from Trump. I mean, this is how they've managed to have the population be so divided that they're worried about some senile puppets who are completely disempowered. Remember when Trump was leaving, he said, we lost the election, he said, what way is this to run the country? And he was president, right? That tells you everything you need to know. He was helpless. Everybody is, because they have the system rigged and everyone's so weak and pathetic, there's no actionable plan. There's no defense. They can just come take your lunch money. You know, and I went through this personally. That's why I'm able to, I don't know, I'm not being critical, I'm just being honest, but, you know, I'm able to say this because for me, my hope has always been tied to the Sajmarg meditation, because it's actually talked about in the prophecies of the system and the predictions that the current system will have to go down because of its own depravity, which we now see happening, and that only spirituality will save this world. And the system has been transformational in my personal life, being able to connect me with the divinity within. And it's a growing process. Like, it gets better and better the longer that I do it. And I've seen it, you know, in myself and other people that do it, and the benefits of the system and how that makes me a better person. And that if everybody was doing this, the world would be transformed. And no matter how bad you are, when you start, you'll be better off connecting to the divinity within. I mean, that's at least been my experience. And so the system works, and it's worked on me based in my experience, and I've seen it work on other people. And the project and the way that it is being rolled out in terms of the collapse of our civilization and people needing to and wanting to connect to God in a post-apocalyptic world is a believable scenario for me, and I've talked about that extensively. And so the system has been great for me. And the two masters of the system I knew were incredible people. At least one of them was. And the other guy looked like he was going to be great. And I saw the second guy, Dodgy, who is now the president and master of the system, be, elevated to a higher spiritual condition. And I witnessed it, and I could see it. And, I was, like, I don't want to say friends, but was somebody who, benefited. He had taken an interest in me personally, and I had seen him be a spiritual person. I saw his transformation, and, I was witness to this. And so I thought when he took over as president and master of the system, he'd be great. And, all of this was, it's something that, I didn't think there was any chance of him turning into some sort of scumbag and falling, but that's what happened. And it took me, some time to accept this because I had seen all the positives, and so much of my, my faith in the system and hope for the future of humanity was tied to it. But I had to accept it because the evidence was overwhelming. The guy got into corrupt scams and started doing stupid things, and he just lost it. Like, he sucks. He's, everyone who does a system is, the most of them are in agreement with me about him, or they won't come out publicly and say it. But deep down they know, because nobody's paying attention to the guy. Like, he's not only like corrupt and criminal, but he's also incompetent boob. And he's just, gone into some idiotic state and has failed and fallen. And as painful as that was for me, I was able to do it. And most recently, RFK Jr. has been the only politician that was able to articulate and understand truther positions. And he was on the right side of the boop, and he's on the right side of the environment and some other things that mean a lot to me. And he's able to verbalize these things from a position where he's been censored and understand the censorship and the pushback that we're getting on social media. He's suing YouTube and has had a positive effect already by making the Democrats openly rig the primary against him, which has been great. He's done things that are entertaining. He's caused effects that are entertaining And he's done a good job of articulating these things in interviews. And so even though I said I was never going to vote again, I was supporting him to some extent and was going to consider voting or whatever. And then it came out, he had this horrible position on Palestine. And then I had to see, his past. I mean, he was a womanizer that had 37 affairs in 1 year and just cheated on his wives, and one of his wives committed suicide. It was just just the whole Kennedy thing. And I had to accept that he was a lot worse than I thought. He has potential and he is different. He's better in some ways. But he's obviously born into the club and he's a part of this thing, whether he's, as corrupt as these other guys are. He's broken and he's got a poor character and he's just a failure. Like so many human beings are. We're a failing species right now. And I didn't think he was going to change anything. For me, I believe the collapse of the system is not only inevitable, but it's a good thing. Overall, it's a good thing. It's what's best for us on a spiritual level, and it's what's necessary for the world. But we're all 100% dependent on it, and there's no backup plan, and I talk about this extensively. And all those things are painful to realize because, especially as you get older and you don't have the ability to change, and we all have a survival instinct and we want to survive, and we, like the things that we like in the system, and we can't imagine them going away. We can't imagine wholesale changes, and nobody really wants to change. Nobody wants to give anything up. Nobody wants to sacrifice. I mean, we all suck in that way because we don't want to give anything up, even though the evil system is what's provided for us. An abusive, demonic system is providing these things that we don't want to give up. And so none of us really want change. None of us really want to face the reality that our kids and our grandkids are and future generations of ourselves and, the children of the future are going to suffer dramatically. They're suffering now. These kids are growing up depraved and depressed, and they spend, most of their time on the internet. They don't even have real lives anymore. And their world and the world that they're going to inherit is much worse than the ones we did. And we've made the world, we're handing off a worse world to them than we were given by our, ancestors, and it just keeps on getting worse. And, even with that, none of us really are interested in any wholesale changes. And so, we really can't complain because we're all complicit in this, and we're all, we don't have the ability to accept and root for the inevitable collapse of our system because that's what's best for everybody. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.